Hello, my name is John Watson. I am the Technical Support Manager for Load Systems International. For this period of instruction, we will cover the battery change of the stainless steel transmitter box. This process can be applied to all of our stainless steel transmitter boxes. Not only the link bar style load cell, but the GS001 and GS002 load pin and line rider transmitter, the GS005 remote anti-two block transmitter, the GS011 length and angle sensor for our older style cable reels, the GS010 angle sensor, as well as the list and trim sensor, and the GS020 wind speed sensor. Give yourself about 10 to 15 minutes to properly complete this process. For this, we will need some basic hand tools: 4mm Allen wrench, a wide flat blade screwdriver, wire brush, a razor blade of some sort. You want to make sure you use non-corrosive RTV. It's very important because this is a battery compartment seal. We will be using the Dow Corning 3145. If this is not available, you can also use at any hardware store or auto parts store the Permatex Ultra Gray. A cleaning agent such as isopropyl alcohol, rags, and as with any good electronic repair, a hammer, in this case rubber mallet. Spare parts from this segment include the 3.6 volt lithium battery. If a 3.6 volt lithium battery is not available, you can use a 1.5 volt alkaline battery. It just will not last as long. For the battery, you can find any battery supply warehouse, Batteries Plus, Interstate Batteries, and they should carry the D-cell 3.6 volt lithium battery. Some of the special conditions to consider are the environment for this particular process. You may want to consider a flat, dry surface, and of course ensure that it's not raining. This process will cover the battery change of our stainless steel wireless load cell. The same process can be applied to all of our stainless steel transmitters, such as the angle sensor. The first step is to remove the Allen screws. Now when doing this, you want to be sure, don't remove them all the way. They only need to come out just a little bit to get them out of the threads of the base plate. We just loosen the Allen screw, and you can feel when the screw is out of its threads, and you can also see that it's not very far up. If you do decide to pull the screws all the way out, what you have basically done is pulled the screw out of its seal on the board, and later on will allow for moisture intrusion to the board itself. So you do want to be careful not to remove the screw entirely. As I said before, just enough to remove it from its threads. So the next step is to pry the transmitter box away from the link bar. And there's a slot built in specifically for this purpose. So we don't see it here. You may just have to spin it around, look for it, it's not there. So we have found the slot, but remember, this is a silicone seal and can be a little bit rough. If the transmitter does come off easy, that means it was improperly sealed before you got there. So, this is what we'll use our hammer for. It's okay to use a rubber mallet, don't use your metal ball peen, and just give it a little smack. Just to break it loose a bit. There we go. And then we can pry in there. So as you can see with the load cell, we have a little pigtail that connects the electronics of the transmitter to the bridge in the load cell. You want to take particular care with that pigtail because if you damage it, putting it back together, obviously you will affect the load cell reading. So for this, to make it easier to change the battery and also to make sure that we do not damage the pigtail, we're just going to unplug it. And now we have the transmitter box in our hand with the battery easily accessible. To remove the battery, just simply grab hold, and that battery holder's a little tough, just pop it right out. So now that we have the battery out, inspect it. Look for water droplets or any type of corrosion that may be around the edges. Look for corrosion on the battery terminals. Make sure the wires are still connected good and that the media is still protecting the board properly. Also, there's a little boot right here. Make sure that little boot is still in place. So now we must clean up all of the old RTV. This is where we're going to use our razor blade, gasket scraping device, wire brush, cleaning solution. It's very important that you get all of the old RTV off, because if you don't, your new seal will eventually fail. So as you can see, we have a fair amount of RTV left on the link bar that needs to come off, as well up in the transmitter. You can see that needs to come off as well, and any other little bits here and there. So here you can see we've removed all the old RTV material, and we can move along to the load link itself, where the majority of the material is left. As you can see, it's a very thin layer, but it still needs to come off. So the advantage for the technician in the field to do this rather than sending it to us is it's a relatively simple process, and also the time involved sending it to us and us doing it and sending it back is definitely not conducive to getting the equipment back up and running in a timely manner. So now we just clean the surface. And the isopropyl alcohol will get any remnants or loose remnants away from the sealing surface. There. As you can see, we now have a nice, clean surface to apply new RTV. So now we have our surface free of all of the old gasket material, clean and dry. So now it's time to change the battery and reattach the transmitter box. So you will see inside the transmitter box there's actually a sticker to help you identify the polarity of the battery. You will also see, along with the polarity sticker, you see that this terminal has a red wire, this terminal has a black wire. Red should coincide with the positive, and black should coincide with the negative. So we have our battery, positive, negative polarity, and this can be a little tough, but just get it in there, and that's it. So when you insert the battery, you want to make sure that this thin skin on the outside of the battery is not cut or pierced by the battery holder, because that will create an internal short with the battery. So here we will apply our small bead of non-corrosive RTV silicone. And as you remember, when we were removing the silicone, there wasn't a whole lot there. So it really does not require a large amount of silicone. Kind of like for you welders out there. You're doing like a fillet weld. For you non-welders, you're mashing silicone into the corner. Be sure to get some in the corner there. I know a lot of guys think the more silicone the better, but not necessarily. In this case, the more silicone just means more cleanup. So you see, I didn't put a whole lot on there, but there is enough to properly seal the transmitter box. So the next step for the load cell, now the load cell is different from the other sensors mainly because it has this little pigtail. So we're going to plug the little pigtail back in without disturbing the silicone. Sometimes you may have to flip it over and get it in there. But proper connection is imperative. You see it's in there, the tab is positioned properly, it's not loose. Now, you will see the screws are offset a little bit, and you can see the holes they go into. So you want to make sure when you put this together that that screw, as you can see, is pretty close to that pigtail. It's very easy to damage that pigtail with the screw. which will lead to a load reading error or problems. So we just place the box in place, give it a good squeeze, and you see all that silicone ooze out. So you can see with a very small bead I put, we still have a fair amount that squeezed out. So now it comes time to tighten the screws. Now, contrary to popular belief, the screws are not the holding force of the transmitter box. The screws are basically there just to hold the box in place while the RTV dries. The RTV being the main component for the strength of the seal. Now, when tightening these, be very careful, because as you can see, there's a small rubber seal under the washer that goes that'll kind of smash between the washer and the transmitter box. You don't want to over smash that seal with a little rubber O-ring, because that will lead to water intrusion. So again, we mash it down, we just kind of tighten it a little bit, and that's about it. We're not over tightening these screws. You just kind of see where the O-ring starts to squish a little bit, and just give it another quarter to a half turn. And that's it. Look around the load cell, make sure we have a nice, even, consistent seal, and you can tell by how much came out of the seam. And we do. We do need to clean it up a little bit. Now, it's easy to let it dry and then get your razor blade and cut the RTV off. But if you're pressed for time, operator wants to go back to work, we just grab a rag. You do want to wipe off the excess, because the excess will create areas where moisture can sit. And if moisture sits for any amount of time, it will penetrate any seal. So again, we use a little more isopropyl alcohol or any cleaning solvent, safe for electrical use. Let me make sure that seal is clean. So to recap, we removed the transmitter box, we disconnected the pigtail, we removed the battery, then we inspected the inside for moisture intrusion, corrosion, or anything that's out of place. We thoroughly cleaned the sealing surface, removed all the old gassing material. We installed a new battery. Then we reinserted or reattached the pigtail, making sure it's connected good. Then we applied new sealant, new non-corrosive RTV, and then reattached the transmitter box.